So a very warm welcome to the induction for the mindfulness course that you signed up for. And I hope over the next 20-25 minutes or so, a lot of the questions or wonderings that you may have are going to be answered. And if not, that's not a problem, because you can email me or we can arrange to talk on the phone as well. So the induction is arranged into several different brief sections. The first one will be talking a little bit about the definitions of mindfulness. What's the working idea that we're going to start this process with? After that, I'll discuss what the course can and what it cannot offer realistically. Then we'll talk about the experiential nature of mindfulness, as opposed to it being a kind of clever academic idea. Also the group, which is fundamental to this process. There's going to be a number of people who are going through this process along with you. And so the group process is important, and we'll be talking about that. I will also be talking about attitudes. What kind of attitudes are helpful and what kind of attitudes are less than helpful to approaching a mindfulness course. Also, very importantly, we'll be talking about the difficulties. So I don't need to warn you about the easy bits and the lovely bits, but it's important for me to clearly outline the difficulties, the inevitable difficulties of doing an intensive mindfulness course. Finally, we'll be talking about support and how you can receive support and what sort of support will be available. So the classical definition of mindfulness was offered by a guy called John Kabat-Zinn, who formulated this kind of intervention, and that is to pay attention in a particular way. And that particular way is on purpose, in the present moment, and without judgment. So in a way, mindfulness is nothing particularly special, particularly spiritual or voodoo or cultish or whatever. It's very simple. It's something that we get born with. It's attention, it's awareness. And we're going to pay attention in a particular way. And that's on purpose. So purposefully implies an element of training, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. And we're going to be paying attention to the present moment, not yesterday, not tomorrow, not any other time, but right here and right now. And also, thirdly, without judging, which involves a kind of attitude of meeting each moment as if we don't know what's going to happen. Because of course we don't. We have our plans, we have our expectations, but we don't really know exactly what's going to happen. So it's getting in touch with the reality of that. Not judging, not prejudging, so a lack of prejudice, if you like. I have a twofold working definition that I use. And on the one hand, it's a simple scientific training process. So in a way, we're sort of quite robotically, quite sort of computer-like retraining. We're rewiring our brains, and this has been borne out clearly in fMRI studies and neuroscience studies, that actually the mindfulness course will actually change the way that our neurons fire in our brain. So I don't want to use the word brainwashing, because that's obviously a little bit it's a little bit loaded. But if we like retraining or untraining, if you like, untraining a lot of the deep patterns that we have accumulated over our lives that do not serve us. So that is the sort of, if you like, the colder, the slightly more less personal side of the coin. The other side of the coin is quite different, but is just as valid, and that is an intimacy, becoming more intimate with our experience, with our moment-to-moment present experience. And this is much more sort of warmer, not always easy, because intimacy is not always easy, but coming up against allowing ourselves to drink in the inevitable pleasure that sometimes gets lost, that sometimes we don't appreciate, but also the displeasure, to learn from the displeasure. So this working definition works well the way I teach. On the one hand, we can sort of have one foot quite firmly in the sort of science, the sureness of that. But also there's the other much more personal, much more intimate side, which is actually what we're going to be doing, is training to get much closer to ourselves, to our experience, for better or for worse. So what the course realistically can offer, and realistically what it cannot offer. It's normal for many of us to come to a mindfulness course looking for a quick fix for the difficulties, for the hard experiences that we may have had, or for the distress that we may be feeling. Unfortunately, mindfulness is not a quick fix. It's much better than that. Quick fixes will tend to be exactly that, quick, and not last very long. Whereas mindfulness, I like to think, and I know from my personal experience, is much deeper, it's much more authentic. So it really isn't a quick fix. It's a much bigger commitment and offers infinitely more than most sort of quick fixes would do. It's not therapy, and therapy is a wonderful, fantastic thing. I'm a big fan of psychotherapy, but that's not what's going to be happening here. We're going to be much more looking at what's happening right now. So of course we all come with our history, we all come with our baggage, and that is very welcome. That's not to say that that is not welcome, it is welcome. But rather than getting involved in the story about, say, what a sibling may have done to us at a certain time in our life that upset us and hurt us, we'll be looking at much more right now, what is happening, how are those feelings, those thoughts, and those physical sensations about that experience manifesting right now in this moment. So it's a subtle difference, and it's a very important difference as well. To note especially, what we're not going to be doing is getting rid of stress or getting rid of anger or whatever issues we may have. And there's a very good reason for that. And the reason is that, as far as I'm concerned, it does not work. It's simply not possible. Suppression or getting rid of is just simply not a good strategy. Or not a strategy that's effective. What we're going to be doing much more is actually becoming more intimate with boredom, let's say. How does that feel? And we're not doing this to torture ourselves, but we are doing it in order to learn about, let's say, boredom. If I have to tuck into a pot of Haagen-Dazs every time I feel bored, then boredom really has a strong hold over me. You could argue that I'm actually controlled by boredom. But if I can learn about the boredom, if I can learn about the hunger pangs, the physical sensations, the thoughts that come with it, then I'm in a much better position to do something about it, to do something beneficial, and to help myself. So in a way, we're not going to be getting rid of stress, which is ironic for a stress reduction course, but we're going to be relating to it in a very, very different way, which has a very particular effect. Of course, we all come to a mindfulness course, to a stress reduction course, wanting to reduce stress. Um, I like to think of it as we're going to do what works, and we're not going to waste time doing what doesn't work. So mindfulness is fundamentally experiential rather than an academic understanding endeavor. So realistically, what we are going to be doing is we're going to be actually doing the training. Mindfulness in many ways is a verb. It's something that we do, not something that we just sort of pontificate and think about. So the training aspect, the actually being in the present moment, is often even more important than understanding, the academic understanding. And this is because it's very easy for us, especially in a very cognitive world that we live in, a very thought-ruled world, to try to try and think our way out of problems. But often the problems are the thought themselves. So in this way, we're going to be really doing the practices. We're going to be practicing mindfulness. We're going to be being present rather than spending too much time on trying to understand every little facet of mindfulness. Because a lot of the understanding of mindfulness comes naturally and comes organically through the process of training. So it's like trying to understand playing the piano from the perspective of someone who cannot play the piano. You may be able to learn about the pianos, learn about music, but it's only possible to really deeply understand mindfulness when one actually has some grounding in the training practices. So this is why it's very important that the practice takes precedence. Of course, we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We all need some understanding in order to motivate us to move further into this endeavor. But the way the course is taught is fundamentally non-didactic. So I am not going to be standing there and telling you, oh, you should. This is how you should live your life. Oh, you're doing it all wrong. You need to do it like this. This is the way forward for you. I'm not going to be doing that because I wouldn't really want to do that anyway. And most importantly, it doesn't work. Most people's behavior will not change. What I see my role as is facilitating you examining your moment-to-moment experience and learning from that, because that's what we tend to respond to. If, for example, if someone is a smoker, one might know, oh, this is what I need to do. I need to stop smoking. But it doesn't mean that you respond to the doctor or your friends saying you must stop smoking. You must stop smoking. But when we know for ourselves in our experience, when we feel the kind of terrible cough in the morning, the sickness, the out of breathness, then from that perspective, we really change our behavior. We really do move forward. And the way that this non-didactic teaching manifests during the course is usually by practice inquiry. So we'll do a practice which might involve sitting still for a period of time, let's say focusing on our breathing. And then after that, I'll usually ask a question such as, how was that? What did you notice about that experience? And then someone may volunteer, oh, I felt quite bored, actually, which is a very normal response. And then what we might do is just engage in a sort of gentle kind of exploration of what was happening. What was the boredom like, for example? So there'll be probably quite a lot of that. There also are cognitive exercises, more didactic exercises, but the cut and thrust is really about the practice itself, because that's what works. So as for the group process, when we embark on a mindfulness course, we do so along with a number, 10 to 15 other participants. And this is how it was formulated right from the beginning. And the group tends to provide an enormously important and valuable wellspring of learning, information, and shared experience. It really is a great benefit and a great and greatly beneficial to embark on this endeavor with other people who are going through exactly the same process. So a lot of the learning will come not from the teacher but from other participants as the process moves forward. And it's obvious there are certain sort of respectful ways of being in a group, and one of the things I ask for in advance is that they are adhered to. So I don't need to really to tell you what they are. It's being respectful. It's being as polite and as sensitive as possible. This has never really been a problem in any of the groups that I've taught, but I think it's important to outline that so everyone feels a sense of security and safety. One of the ways that that we can really provide our support for the group is by turning up on time and attending all the sessions if possible. When I first started teaching, I wasn't really so hot on this, and I really see the big effect it has on the group. So I do ask people from the outset to please, as far as is possible, please do turn up on time, and please attend all the sessions, or if not, let me know in advance. And this really helps. This is a great gift to the group. It really helps the course run smoothly. So as for helpful attitudes or helpful approaches, John Kabat-Zinn did some interesting research, and what he found was that people who come with a sort of devotional attitude, which you might think would be beneficial, so people who are kind of totally sold on the idea of mindfulness, they've read the science, they've heard all about it, their friend did it and is now kind of, in sort of perpetual ecstasy. The people like that actually do not tend to derive the greatest benefit from the course. Neither do people who come just because their mother or their therapist or someone has said, "Oh, you really need this. It's you really need this because it's just not happening." So these two kind of extremes of sort of devotion and sort of cynicism don't tend to sit so comfortably with the mindfulness course. But what, ironically, John Kabat-Zinn found that was really beneficial was to have a sort of skepticism. It's something that personally, what drew me to this kind of thing at the start. So actually, it's good to be a little bit skeptical. And I think this is because if we're skeptical, we haven't prejudged. We're sort of testing. We're not going into it with fixed ideas. And this is so important, to not come to the mindfulness course with very, very fixed ideas. Because moment to moment, we're going to see what happens. We don't know what's going to happen in 8 weeks' time because we're not there. And as far as we know, no one has the power of seeing the future. So an element of skepticism along with a full commitment. So this is fundamental, a full commitment. It can be very easy to be skeptical and just sort of not engage with the course, but the skepticism along with a full commitment to the practices, to the difficulties of the course, is a very powerful attitude to meet the course with. So the difficulties of the course. The 8-week mindfulness course is difficult. For most people, it's difficult. This is a reality that I like to think of it as there's nothing for nothing, in the way that the quick fix is easy to obtain and actually does not tend to give us that much. But that which is much more difficult, which requires more commitment, you may think logically will deliver a lot more depth, a lot more profoundness. And I think this is exactly how the mindfulness course works. The first and often the biggest difficulty is that it is a requirement of the mindfulness course to do up to an hour a day of home practice. And this is not because the course or the teacher are cruel and wanting you to perform, but it's a reality. If I was teaching the piano, turning up for 2 hours a week on a Wednesday night or a Friday morning would not be enough at the end of 8 weeks in order to play a beautiful piece of Beethoven. It just wouldn't. It's a fact of life. However, with an 8-week course, with practicing every day, for better or for worse, because often learning the piano, learning mindfulness, learning anything is difficult. It's can be boring, can be annoying, can be frustrating. But if one can commit to that systematic practice day after day after day after day, after 8 weeks, without a doubt, however well or poorly we judge ourselves to be at playing the piano, let's say, we would be able to play a beautiful piece of music. It's a fact. It's indisputable. So the mindfulness course is exactly the same, and this is simply the reason that up to an hour a day of home practice is a requirement of coming on the course, and it's not going to be something that I'm going to be checking up on or testing you on. It's really a individual commitment, and I say to people, please don't come on the course. I don't want to take your money if one is not willing to engage in the home practice, because I feel like I'd be ripping you off, because this is an intensive course, and in order for it to progress, the practice, as I mentioned earlier, is fundamental. It's the central it's the cornerstone. I sometimes slightly facetiously say that the course is really the home practice, and then you're going to pop in a couple of hours a week to talk about the home practice. So I'll probably bark on a lot about that before the course, and then when the course starts, it'll be over. My sole focus will be not on checking up, but on supporting you, helping you in any way I can to do the practice as best you can. So the second difficulty, if you like, of the course is what we call turning towards. So we've evolved quite effectively to move away from, to run away from that which we find difficult, that which we find unpleasant and unwanted. And this has served us extremely well. However, it has side effects. And what we're going to be doing on the mindfulness course is actually something quite opposite. We're going to be, in a way, gently turning towards. So obviously turning towards that which is pleasurable and enjoyable, which I don't need to warn you about, but also turning towards that which is more difficult, like the boredom I mentioned earlier. And if you remember my story about the Haagen-Dazs, it's the same thing. If we don't turn towards, let's say, the boredom, then we are controlled by the boredom. So it's a gentle process. It's not something that we're going to be flinging the doors open to every unpleasant thing in our experience. That's not wise. That's not a sensible way of going about things. But just gently to start with, what is it like to open up to the boredom, maybe the frustration, the twiddling fingers, the gritting of the teeth? What happens when I get bored? So it's going to be a gentle investigation into and a gentle turning towards these difficulties in our lives, fundamentally not because we're masochistic, but because we want to learn. And we want to learn about these things because it gives us so much more control over them. And by ignoring them or suppressing them, they have control over us. So those are the two main difficulties of the course. And maybe it's a good time to just mention the mindfulness course, especially the way that I teach it, is infused with a sense of gentleness and a sense of kindness. I believe this to be fundamental. It's what I studied for my master's, self-compassion, and I believe it to be one of the most fundamental things that is offered by the course, gently cultivating this this kindness as best we can, this gentleness as best we can, often in the face of the difficulties that come up. So lastly, I'd just like to talk about support. And support is available fundamentally from myself as the course facilitator. And that can be particularly important if you come into difficulties. Difficulties are normal in life, and they're normal on a mindfulness course. And I like to think that the mindfulness course really reflects the realities of our life. So I'm there by email, by phone, or even possibly in person to assist you in any way that I can. And it might also be a good idea to get in touch with somebody that you know better than you know me, or maybe even someone who's done a course previously who might understand the process that you're going through. You may also choose to support yourself by talking to anybody who has an effect on your ability to do the home practice. So for example, if you have children or a partner, it might be a good idea to sort of warn them, ask them, is it possible for you to protect my space, to facilitate me having the room to do this course that I've signed up for? That can be enormously beneficial and enormously supportive for how deeply you get in touch with the course. And I think that is just about it. So thank you very much for watching this induction, and I do really want to hear from you. So any feedback, any questions, even if you don't have any questions, please just fire me off an email to let me know that you've completed the induction. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing you in the near future. So have a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.